Softball for the final Tuesday night sports segment of the semester. Tonight, I will be talking about the CSU football team again, and as always, I'll give you the rundown of this week's fantasy football trends. With that being said, let's kick things off with some Ram athletics. After a lopsided loss at the hands of the Boise State Broncos last week down in Idaho, CSU will be back in Canvas Stadium this Saturday afternoon to take on the winless UNLV Rebels, at least as for now. But before we get into what's going on the field this week between these two longtime Mountain West rivals, let's take a look back at recent history between the two squads. The Rams have absolutely dominated the series as of late, taking the last four contests with an average margin of nearly 19 points. Most recently, CSU cruised out to a 21-0 on State Pride Day last year and never looked back, taking victory 37-17. Current Rams quarterback Patrick O'Brien was the starter, going 17 for 27 with 234 yards on what was one of the most effective outings of 2019. However, in 2020 now, there is a major difference between this year's team versus the 2019 squad, especially it's the skill position. If O'Brien, he will be without his favorite target in Warren Jackson, who opted out of the season, focusing on the up-and-coming NFL draft. Jackson had over half of the Rams' receiving yards in last year's contest, meaning the Rams are going to have to get the ball to different playmakers this time around to find success through the air. As for the Rebels, they also have a completely new offensive look, led by head coach Marcus Ariel and brand new transfer quarterback Justin Rogers. Last week, the Rebels fell to the undefeated San Jose State on the road, 34-17, with Rogers completing 12 of 18 passes for 162 yards and a 19-yard touchdown strike. Past the air attack, though, it was the ground game that really struggled for UNLV, only recording 70 yards and a measly 1.9 yards per carry throughout the night. With these shortcomings in mind, the Rebels had under 300 yards of total offense. That's definitely not a very pretty stat line for the Rebels. Speaking of things that weren't pretty, CSU took on Boise State last week, where they got blown off the blue turf 52-21. The Rams allowed the Broncos to score in pretty much every way possible, but it was the Rams' special teams that struggled the most, letting Boise State charge through the line for a total 3 block kicks, all which resulted in returns, including 2 of CSU's punts and 1 of their field goals. The Rams' offense wasn't much better, getting shut out in both the first and fourth quarters and only producing 315 yards of total offense with 3 touchdowns when the game was well out of reach. Pushing past what happened in Boise and looking to the keys of the games, the main thing for the Rams that they need to improve upon this week is their matchup with the special teams mistakes. When you're allowing a team to score 3 times on special teams, it is going to be a long night, no matter who you are playing. As for the Rebels, they are going to have to figure out the run game, whether that means implementing more play-action passes to open up the box or using more motion before the snap to draw defense's attention. All in all, both teams struggled in their first time out, so this will be an important bounce-back game to get back on track, assuming the game ends up being played. After reports broke this morning, this weekend's UNLV-CSU matchup might be called due to pandemic-related concerns. Head coach Steve Adazio let the media know that while he was aware of some potential issues with the up-and-coming matchup, he hasn't heard any word of cancellation just yet. With both athletic departments scrambling to figure out the whole situation, only time will tell if these two squads will end up getting the chance to battle it out for a much-needed win. Now moving past the college ranks into the pros, it's officially Week 11 in the NFL, which means that your fantasy playoffs are right around the corner. For my final week of fantasy advice, I'm going to talk to you about some players that you can officially drop off of the waiver wire in order to make some space for new faces. Starting things off, the first player that I feel like you should get rid of is Bills running back Devin Singletary. Singletary has had double-digit points only in Week 3. He has already played the easiest part of his schedule and has a bye week this week, which means that you're probably going to want to drop him off and you're not going to want him on your team because he's just going to take up bench room. The Bills have a pass-heavy offense with Josh Allen doing what he is at quarterback, and rookie Zach Moss has been getting more and more touches in the backfield, which means that Singletary is not necessarily going to get as many touches that he has in the past, which is another bad thing. So you don't really need him anymore, and you could probably find a better running back on the waiver wire. Now moving on to some pass catchers. You should definitely say goodbye to Tyler Higbee of the LA Rams. He has awful matchups for the rest of the week, or rest of the season, and we'll see Arizona and Seattle 2 times each, whom are both top 10 against tight ends. So that's a really bad matchup for Higbee at the end part of his season. He had a breakout week in week 2 with 3 touchdowns against the Eagles, but has done nothing since. Those have been the only scores that he has had all season, those 3 touchdowns. So that's another downside to him. He's only averaging a little over 6 points per week, which, again, another downside, so I think Higbee has to go. And finally, you can break ties with Broncos receiver Jerry Judy. Judy had a good week against the Falcons in Week 9, but he won. He won't see any defenses like that for the rest of the season. He has a lot more tough matchups, and we know that the Falcons have not had the best defense throughout this year, so not very good for Judy. He's only averaging a little over 7 fantasy points per game, so there's another downside to him. And also, if you look at this Broncos team, they are really struggling. Drew Lock is struggling. He's also looking to have an injury, so you're not sure what's going on. So that's bad for the receivers on the Broncos, so that's another player that I am suggesting that you get rid of off of your team. Well, Rams, that's all I have for tonight. But thank you for tuning into my final show here at CTV. But don't go anywhere because Krista McAllister is up next with your entertainment scoop.